Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, and Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Hello, everybody. I greet you from West Michigan in my bachelor's pad condo and in my bachelor's man cave. I'm very thankful to be with you again, and I was thinking about God, you know, as I always think about him, but he is such a generous God, because he wants to give us some of his qualities, which I don't deserve them, but God has given me gifts, spiritual gifts, and he wants to give. Well, all believers have spiritual gifts. It's just a matter of their developing them by God's grace. But when I was in the ministry, God gave me the gifts of preaching and teaching, and I was very thankful for that. And I worked at being a pastor, you know, visiting people and so forth. And God blessed that in some ways, but he blessed my preaching and teaching a lot. And those are spiritual gifts. But also, when I retired, God gave me a different gift. I've preached once in 30 or 13 years as a retired pastor. I preached only once. I preached on the book of Jonah, the whole book of Jonah in 30 minutes. Now that's a quite a task, but God bless that sermon. But God actually, now the main gift God has given me is the gift of creativity, just as he often gives the gift of creativity to musicians who give their gift to God. So he has given me the gift of creativity through writing. And I really didn't expect this, but as I said earlier today, I didn't expect it at all, but God sure made it happen through Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. You know, God is three persons in one God, and he they do everything together. In the beginning, those people bug me. In the beginning, God the Father, through Jesus, by the power of the Holy Spirit, created the whole universe and the human race. And then through Jesus, when he came, God the Father, through him, by the power of the Holy Spirit, gave Jesus to die willingly in order to take our punishment that should have fallen upon us for all our rebellion upon himself. And then in Christians' lives, God the Father, through Jesus, by the power of the Holy Spirit, works changes, positive changes to change us to be more like Jesus. And if we're kind of stubborn, we have that old pride, you folks probably don't have pride, but yeah, I have pride. So, but we have that selfish pride that resists often what God wants to do in our lives. So he has to jolt us a little bit with difficult times, perhaps, and then he changes us, and he wants to change us through regular prayer, daily prayer, and daily reading of the Bible, and through our being involved in church and hearing messages, and in other ways as well. But if we resist his changes, well, he's going to have to be like a father who has to give tough love to his children when they disobey. So that's what's going on when he gives us his gifts, when he gives us the qualities that he possesses. He gives them to us generously. And you and I have to just scratch our heads, why would God give me this? I'm far from perfect. I don't deserve it, but he does it anyway. And that's his love, and his grace. He gives us free acceptance, and that's grace, in spite of our shortcomings and our failings. And so God chooses to give us various qualities, and the greatest quality of all is love, as in the chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians. The faith, hope, and love are his gifts, but the greatest of these is love, because love will carry on for eternity, whereas hope and faith, hope, and love, we won't need faith anymore, in the sense that it will we will have to use faith in order to have our life strong, and we won't need hope, because it'll all be fulfilled someday when Jesus returns. But we will all have love for each other, love for God the Father through Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. And of course, there are many others. He wants to give us joy. And how can we be joyful in the middle of struggles? Well, if we have our focus on God, we can be. Jesus, the book of Hebrews is a very interesting book. And in chapter 12, it says that Jesus, for the joy that's set before him, endured the cross. In other words, it's amazing what Jesus endured. He was flogged within an inch of his life by the Roman soldiers, who were notoriously cruel and sadistic people who just enjoyed punishing prisoners. And he was very much weakened physically by their punishment. and that was one of the reasons he died so quickly within 3 hours on the cross. But the cross itself was cruel and unusual punishment reserved for the worst criminals. But he was bleeding so much from the Roman soldiers' flogging and cruel punishment before that he stumbled and fell on his way to the cross, on his way to Golgotha, which is the hill outside of Jerusalem, where he was crucified. But so that they had to enlist Simon from the Mediterranean world who was coming into town. They enlisted him to carry the cross for Jesus. And then it was a suffocating death where he was nailed with nails through his wrists out wide, and then of course his feet were nailed to the wood, the upright wood, and the horizontal wood was to take the nails in his wrists, and of course if he let his body fall, he would suffocate and die. So he had to keep his body up all the time, and if that weren't the worst, he was stripped of all of his clothing, perhaps most of his clothing. But anyway, it was very, very embarrassing and terrible death that he would endure. So he had to, and he was on the cross 6 hours before he died, and three of those hours were the result of that that crucifixion that the Roman soldiers gave him, because he just suffered horribly, and he willingly did that, so that he would die to take our punishment with his punishment, and with his resurrection he gives us gifts, and gifts of love, joy, peace. Joy is a constant thing that we feel being lifted up in our spirits and our souls, with joy in focusing upon God. And the sad thing about the Christian life often is that Christians don't experience joy. They put their attention on their circumstances rather than upon God, the three persons in the one God, and they have to mature to focus on God alone, in spite of all the circumstances, all the terrible things that may be happening to them. But God brings good, and has promised to bring good out of all the struggles that we have. But joy is an amazing thing. Paul commanded us, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. And he was in prison awaiting his possible death at the time. So his attention was on God, and perhaps he was telling himself too, rejoice in the Lord always. But it's in the Lord, you see. The attention is on God. And when we're able to do that, that kind of focus, we can go through life with a kind of peace and love and joy that the world doesn't understand. And many people, even Christians who claim to be Christian, don't even understand that. But God gives it and wants to give it to us. And that is totally amazing to me, because those are free gifts free gifts to us in spite of our unworthiness. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you. All these qualities that God has, He doesn't selfishly keep it to Himself, keeping them to Himself, but He wants to share them freely to us, and that's grace. God's amazing grace, among other things that He shows us. So, any questions you have at the beginning of our hour and a half now? Any questions off the top of your head? And I'll try to give you an answer off the top of my head. Okay. Describe your first impression of God. Oh, my first impression of God. Well, I think I've mentioned before that I thought that God was like Santa Claus. And I was an unbeliever at the time as a child. And I thought that if I just ask Him for what I want for Christmas, that He would give it to me. Well, Santa is a fable, or he certainly isn't real. But the idea there in the American and Western European cultures is that if we're good little boys and girls, God will give us many gifts. And if we're not good little boys and girls, the Dutch have Black Peter, who comes to give a piece of coal in the stockings of children who are naughty. Well, God is not like that. God definitely is not like that. And my first impression of God was wrong, because I didn't know what the Bible taught about God. And the church didn't help me, because they really didn't preach what God was like in the Bible. So they didn't teach it either. And so I expected God to give me that little bicycle in the hardware store window if I asked for it. So I thought that God was going to, I was a good little boy. Actually, I was a good little Pharisee. The Pharisees were people who thought that they could be good enough to please God and accept His and earn His love, and that's not true at all. But anyway, they were there in the Bible, of course, in the Gospels, but then as a little Pharisee boy, I thought I was good enough to receive His gifts. So I asked God for that little red bicycle so I could ride it. And Christmas came with mounds of gifts, but that little bike wasn't among them. So my impression then was that prayer didn't work, And of course, my dad was a pragmatist, which means that what you do that ends up being good is really good, And so it's your experience. And my experience then was that God must not be involved in the lives of people. And so I just thought, well, He must be far away, and He wasn't going to answer my prayers, so I just won't pray anymore. And the answer to that, in the 63 years since I became a Christian at the age of 16, the answer to that is 63,000 words, what God has done. And I learned that God doesn't always bow to our wishes. That is very, what's not good for us, He's not going to give us. And what's good for us, yes, He'll answer our prayers, but then he'll answer in a very different way as well. And maybe He'll say, well, not yet. It's not going to happen yet, but I will answer it eventually. and the impatience of our age generally won't accept that answer. Because yeah, we want to get things now, you know. I have a credit card, but I have money in the bank that will cover the credit card every month, so I don't pay the interest. And much of society doesn't operate that way. We want things now, so we get the credit card out and we have it now, but we can't pay it all off at that time, and so we pay interest. Well, that's not how I want to do that, because I think God wants me to pay it off every month fully. I know that's majority of Americans anyway. Certainly aren't that way. So, but anyway, that's a side thing. So, do you have any questions for me? Okay. I'm going to. My eyes are watering, so I'm going to put on my glasses. Okay. Think of a time you had difficulty believing or trusting God. What did that look like for you? Well, what I would say is there are several times in my life, even as a Christian, that in which I just had trouble accepting what God wanted. When God called me to be a pastor, and I went off to college, and in order to get into seminary, I needed a Greek major. I mean, 18 hours of Greek. And that seemed like Mount Everest, and I wasn't going to climb Mount Everest of Greek Everest, you know. So I ran away, quote unquote. Ran away, like Jonah in the Bible. Jonah, very much like Jonah, I decided that I didn't want to follow God's will and God's call that I sensed very strongly out on the farm. It was so strong that I remember taking a personality test in my junior year, I think it was, in high school, and they came back with the results. They said, well, Bruce could do this or that or the other thing, but he seems to be so strong in wanting to be a minister that he'll probably do that. So I had a very strong call out on the farm, collecting the corn and the hay and so forth. And I got this really strong idea after I was a believer at 16 or 17. And yeah, God wants me to be a minister. But then the Greek major made me face the reality of life. I decided, well, since I don't want to be a minister, and so I might as well be a teacher. You know, that often was the second choice for people. And then I said, well, let's see. I didn't ask God about this because, yeah, I didn't want to have that Greek major. And I thought, well, history, philosophy, biology, those are all good majors, but something about them, I decided not to. And I ended up with English, and that was a perfect major for writing. And God was leading me even while I was rebelling. That was really amazing to me. Later. Okay, another question. What was the resolution of that crisis of faith? Well, the resolution was that I went into teaching, and I taught what they would call nowadays later elementary English and all the subjects 1 year, and then I taught high school. I taught junior high, all English, and then I decided, I wasn't praying about it because I was running away just like Jonah did. And I decided then that I would go into sales management. And just there are 10 things, 10 events that God used to point me to go into the ministry. And one of those events was, let's see, which one should I pick out of all the 10? My sales. I God blessed my sales, and for a year or two, my district was the top district in the branch, and I almost got promoted to regional sales person and manager, and but the guy that was going to replace me, or at least we offered that job to him, at the last moment decided not to. Okay, and I know why now, of course, but he decided not to. So I stayed a district manager instead of getting bumped up to regional manager and maybe eventually branch manager and in the company. But what God did was take away his blessing for my sales. I sold easily, maybe one out of 2 or 3 demonstrations, which the average is 1 out of 10. God really blessed my demonstrations of the product, and but then I went into a huge drought. Rather point, I had 25 demonstrations without any sales at all, and my branch manager was concerned about me, and he heard that I had done that, and that I wasn't getting any sales, all these demonstrations, and he came down and watched my presentation. He said, 5 demonstrations in a row with that demonstration, but it happened. And God was withholding his blessing, and that was very stressful, because God had blessed me and blessed us with a new house as a result of the first year and a half or 2 years, and he blessed us with just the right house that for later events, but God bless me with direction through the blessing in order to get a new house, and then the lack of blessing in order for me to be pointed back to school to become a pastor. Then when I went back as a pastor, I only needed 2 years of Greek. They had changed their and bees in Greek and later Hebrew were like miracles to me. But that was how God resolved my crisis of faith, so to speak, by confirming it through that event, or those 2 events, along with many others. And the next challenge was to convince my wife that she was to become a pastor's wife, which wasn't even on the list of things for her to do, much less at the bottom of the list. So, but then God did that with other dramatic things, which you can all read in What God Has Done and my God biography. So that answers your question. Among many other events that are in that book, that longest book I ever wrote, that was published this year. So okay, thank you for the question. Any other questions offhand? Okay, does pride interfere with faith? Well, my pride is definitely there, but my faith um, what God did was, I think I mentioned in the last session, pain, physical pain in my life. Um, Two of those kinds of pain, three kinds of pain altogether. Two of those kinds of pain are osteoarthritis in my hips and in my shoulders, and in my back, and along with that is what's called fibromyalgia, which is muscle pain, and the it can crop up anywhere in any muscle in my body, but it the what God did through His allowing pain in my life, which I have to control, and God gives me grace through medical means and other means to be able to control my pain. Um, what He does through that is He humbles my pride, because I know that I'm weak. My pain teaches me, God teaches me through my pain, that I'm very weak and I cannot write anything that of lasting value apart from God's Spirit through Jesus' victory, enabling me to do it. So that's how God humbled my my pride, that made me feel, oh, hey, I'm a great writer. Well, only by God's grace, only by His choice of me and His allowing physical pain to humble me, just like Paul's thorn in the flesh in 2 Corinthians 12. And Paul says, after asking God, he asked God, take this pain, this whatever it was, this thorn in the flesh. We don't know specifically what it was. I think that's figurative, but in not taking it away, Paul basically says God humbled me, because I've been planning all these churches and preaching and teaching, and I could have been really proud as a pastor, but God humbled me through pain, in order to help me say, like Paul in the 10th verse of that chapter, when I'm weak, which I'm very weak, as far as my physical condition is. When I'm weak, I'm strong, and God makes me strong, made me strong as a preacher and teacher, but it's all to His credit, and that's how God makes me strong, through His presence and power in my life, by the power of the Spirit through Jesus' victory. And so I'm very thankful that He's brought many good things out of my pain, and I'm thankful that God uses me with my writing. I figure that all my writing, my books, that every book that's written, they say, will be read by 5 readers, even if it's from garage sales or whatever means. 5 readers, maybe 2 or 3 will read it from the first reader, and then maybe 1 or 2 through other means. And on the average, five readers for every book. And so therefore, all the books I've given away, and the ones that have been sold, I suppose I have a potential congregation of about, I'd say, 12 to 1,300 people. So that's a pretty good start. But I sense that God is going to open up many more sales, and the only reason I want sales, which I'm not going to benefit from personally, but the only reason is so that many people will be blessed, that God will bless many people through my writing, and I pray that many of you will be blessed, and that God will work in your lives, because that's all I want. I want God to be honored through my writing and my publishing. And so I wrote Divided Together, 2084, mystery novel, where Farhan, the hero of three novels, in the year 2084, he fight crime, and then decade later, Divided Together, 2094, Farhan and his family go on weekend outings, and Farhan with atheists try to fight crime, a very violent crime in Indianapolis, Indiana. And then the book that came out today, I don't have a copy yet because it came out today, and I will be getting one. But 2104, a decade later, he's still in Indianapolis with his family, and he teams up with a Hindu, and in each book he discusses his Christian faith with the faith and non-faith of his partners and other people in the novel. So it's not just a mystery novel, although it is that, and it's very suspenseful. Each one of them is very suspenseful, as far as what the clues are and who the police, including Farhan as a consultant to the police, how they're going to go about trying to catch people, and so that is, of course, the framework of each novel as mystery novels. But embedded in it is discussions during the brainstorming sessions that he has with his partner at lunch. Usually, he and his partner do discuss in a very respectful way their differing beliefs, and those differing beliefs motivate them to seek justice and to protect life in all the novels. So that's why it's called Divided Together. They are certainly together in the purpose of fighting crime, but they're divided in the sense that they have different beliefs. So that's where the title came from. Whoops, I'm reflecting here. There we go. You got to have this perfect, So anyway, that's the idea behind the title, and of course, 2084 is a century after the George Orwell's 1984. And my next trilogy will be in 1884, 94, and 1904. So 1884 in the Old West, which will be kind of interesting. Okay, another question. Was there any instance that you were helping someone in need but still not able to take their pain away? And how did you move on from it? Oh, very good. Well, not physical pain, of course. We thank the Lord for his gift of medical help in our lives. But I think you're talking about somebody who has emotional pain. In a church where I need some water. My old throat. And I emphasize the word old. My old throat needs it. Well, there was a couple, middle-aged couple, and they had a teenage boy, and he took his life. And I remember going there and they were just grieving, lamenting, just with almost without control, because of they didn't see it coming, and this teenager just out of the blue killed himself. And suicide isn't the unforgivable sin. It's certainly a sin, and if we're a Christian, we can descend into major depression, as I did, and I could see why people would want to take their lives, because it's like a deep, dark hole that you just descend in a kind of a circular fashion. I found, and but I had that strong call to the ministry, what was wrong, and to get back into the ministry, and to be healed. And God did that for me in a very dramatic way. But I don't know. As a pastor, you can just sit and listen to people, but I don't know whether what I did was beneficial to them. I read a scripture and prayed with them, but as they wanted me to. But and in a case like that, grief, as I found, my grief for 43 years worth of my life took a long time to grieve out. And it took 8.5 months, 3 or 4 times a week. I did those kinds of prayers, and finally God gave me peace. And a lot of people suppress their grief. Grief is not something a lot of people like to see, and so people in our culture, that's why there's so much depression in our culture, I think, because Freud was right about that anyway, that depression is repressed anger, and that was definitely the case with me. But so that was a case in which I don't know if I did any good, but I hope in the long run, you see, the helping people with emotional pain doesn't always depend on one person. In fact, it often doesn't. Say an elder of the church will come after the pastor's been there, and that's one seed, that is scattered in their lives, and other people come to support them, and it's a community kind of thing, not just one person helping a person with pain and then it goes away. That's our fast food society. We think, well, people's pain will disappear real quick. It can take years. It can take years. And if we suppress or repress our feelings about it, it can come out in a very devastating way later in our lives, as it did with me when I had 7 years of depression. So that was one case where it was really horrible, and I tried to minister to them as best I could, but that is a long term case of grieving it out, and if they don't do that, that's their responsibility. But I tried to comfort them, as be God's instrument of comfort in their lives. So that's the case with a lot of things in as a pastor, that it takes a community, a church, many Christians to help people overcome the pain in their lives, their emotional pain anyway. So good question. Any other questions you have? Okay, there's another one. Is believing the same as faith? Well, if you read the Gospel of John, and I invite you to do that. Um, Even in one sitting, you could read through the Gospel of John in maybe an afternoon or an evening, maybe a couple of evenings. It's fairly long. John equates faith with believing, but faith is more than just thinking in your head, "Oh yes, I believe in God." Faith is a commitment to the God that I believe in. So it's related. It's very closely related. But faith is giving your life, to the people, to God and Jesus Christ, and to faith in Him. So faith is more than just head knowledge, but it's giving of one's life. You give your life to God, and it's a lot of times people think, well, it's okay if I know something about God and I accept some of that and reject others, whatever. I go to church on Sunday, maybe once or twice a day, Sunday, and uh, and I'm okay. I'll live my life for myself the rest of the time. And I don't think that's true faith, because James says the head knowledge of faith without living it out or works um, is dead. It's useless. And so faith for James means what's in the head has to come out in our commitment of our lives, and that's what faith and believing really is where they're the same. Um, uh, it has to come out in our lives, and if it doesn't, we'd better question, whether we're really a Christian, because the new birth causes us through the Holy Spirit's influence in our lives to want to grow, to want to be more like Jesus, and that's a whole lifelong process of faith. Read Hebrews 11. It talks about all the Old Testament people who had true faith, and that faith gave them hope, a hope of the future Messiah, of course. That they all had that hope, and Jesus fulfilled that hope. But the hope is also for the final time when we'll all be gathered together, all of us perfect, with Jesus in the new creation, in the new universe that God's going to make when Jesus comes back. And that hope is part of faith. And that's what it says in Hebrews 11. So there's a hopeful part of our faith and our believing as well. So I hope that answers your question. If not, you can ask me more. All right. Well, my eyes are tearing up again. Not that I'm crying, but yes, that helps. Is having faith enough to save us? Well, God gives us the gift of faith, and it, as I just said, it has to come out in our daily life that we want to give our lives to God through Jesus by the power of the Spirit, and that all of that is the result of God's rescuing us through Jesus, and that's what salvation is. Salvation is God's rescue of us. It's just like the lifeguards who sit to watch and probably get bored with watching me swim laps back and forth in the pool. Jesus is our lifeguard. And so when we accept Him, God gives us immediately the beginning of our faith. So it's really kind of combined. It's together. And He also gives us the new birth, which is a change in our hearts from the very selfish hearts we were born with, and conceived with. The heart is the center of the human being, not this pumping thing over here. So the change of the heart, as Ezekiel had in, I think it's in 26, Ezekiel 26, and God will give them a new heart, a fleshy heart that will be. God will work with, like potter with the clay, rather than the old flinty hard hearts, that were their hearts of unbelief. And so Jesus said in John chapter 3 that we will receive, that everybody who believes will receive the new birth, and that's the same as the heart transplant, the spiritual heart transplant that Ezekiel talked about, and that God revealed to him. So that's another gift that God gives us when we come to believe, and along with faith, and along with the desire to follow Jesus, our commitment to Him, and the commitment to Him is our love. That's what real love is, a commitment. When two people, when male and female get married, the main thing is not just some romantic thing, although that romance is important to continue in marriage with each other. But the real thing in marriage is a committed love, a decision of the will, and God gives us that grace. God gave that to Winnie and me for 56 years before she died a year ago, November 4. And that's what real love is. God took us through such really traumatic times with my depression, with Keith, our second boy's death, with leukemia back in 72 at 4.5 years old, and my dysfunctional family growing up, and then her death last November, a year ago, allowed all of these traumatic things to happen in my life, and God tested my faith over and over again and strengthened it as a result. In the middle of it, I couldn't see how I could survive all this, but God led Winnie and me through on separate paths, and together as well, and we would talk about what was going on. But 56 years, it's like a triangle, committed to Him at the top of the triangle, and then to each other. And that's the idea of marriage too, that a husband and wife will be committed for life to each other and to God. And that's what God did in our lives. No credit to us, but that's how God strengthened us as a result of our going through such things, and God bringing good out of all of it. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions you have? Okay. Yeah, my eyes are watering. My eyes water all the time, or most of the time. Okay, that's better. What would you say was your favorite quote in this book, the 2104? You're asking me to remember what I wrote. Well, I usually don't remember what I wrote, so I can paraphrase or summarize, but I can't quote word for word. Even the Bible, I'll summarize it, and God gave me that gift to summarize and paraphrase things, but to quote something that's in a book that I wrote, usually I'm on to more projects, right away. So I tend to forget what is in the books that I wrote. So, but I suppose in the discussions that Farhan, the Christian, has with the Hindu Sai Das, who's a young detective, police detective, and they're partners on a part-time basis, of course. Farhan teaches criminology at the university. And in their discussions, it becomes really interesting because Sai has been taught the Hindu way of thought, and Sai, when Farhan, for example, brings up reincarnation, which comes from the Hindu beliefs, it is migrated over here to America and to Western Europe. Reincarnation has been a thought for a long time. I remember a Laurel and Hardy film, black and white film, way back that had I think it was Hardy came back as a donkey instead of when he died, and that was supposed to be funny, but and it was kind of funny that he would come back as a donkey, but that idea has been around for a long time, and says, well, I suppose as a Hindu you believe in reincarnation, and so I said, yeah, that's what I've been taught, and he says, well, the Christian faith is different, and you have a right to believe as you wish, Sai, but we believe, based on the Bible, that the human life is not like a cycle. Hey, I can go around my head here, but if I get it right, it's hard because it's backwards. But anyway, it's not like a cycle where we go from one life to the next, and kind of a circular series of lives. You hear people say, oh, well, I was this in my last life, that's a Hindu idea. And we would call it, maybe in America, it was New Age kind of thinking, and then it became higher consciousness, and that's kind of what it is in my third novel, the 2104, and so the idea of reincarnation, Paul or Farhan says, well, instead, the Christian faith believes that there's a straight line that in one's life. In other words, we're conceived, born, live a life, and die, and that's it. Our souls, if we're believers, go to heaven, and God then accepts us in heaven because of Christ, only because of Christ. And if we are unbelievers and have rejected God, there's another place that's separate from God, which very sad place, and it's called hell in the Bible. So the Christian faith is a straight line, and the same with history. History is not circular, where it comes in and we become better because we're better people. We do more good than bad, so we go to a higher plane or something like that. That's not the Christian faith. And so then the whole point is that in this life we'd better make sure that we're right with God, and He can only make us that way, and we have to surrender our lives to Him, and then Jesus changes us, which is amazing, and happened to me at 16 years old, and it's still happening. This changing of my life, even at 79 years old. So that's kind of my answer to you. One of the things of many of the discussions in all three novels. Okay. Um, what do you think about when you go to sleep at night? That's a very interesting question. Um, I I can get to sleep pretty quickly usually. Um, what I'll tell you what God taught me. When I was seeking psychological help, I went to what they call biofeedback. And it's this guy sitting in this room who is who runs this machine, big machine that when I did it, of course, probably smaller now, as most electronic things are smaller. He ran this machine with things on my body. What do they call them? Anyway, to test my stress level. Well, at that point, my stress level was sky high. I was really stressed out by the anger and anxiety in my life, and of course, a few months later, God relieved me of that through peace that He gave me. But at that time, I was really stressed out. So what He did, he said, "Well, I'll try to help you with your stress." And all you'd have to do is relax your muscles, and breathe in through your abdomen, like they teach people when they become singers in a choir or something. Breathe in with your abdomen, and then breathe out again with your abdomen, and relax your muscles. Maybe I'll go to sleep a minute, while I'm. but when you breathe out, think the word calm. Calm. That's a calming word, calm. And I tried doing that for a little while, and I said to myself, this is really boring. so I then made it into prayers, 2-syllable or 2-word prayers, like Father. I'd breathe out when I'd go there, Father, and just let my muscles relax. Then Jesus, Spirit, one God. Oh, yeah, that's relaxing right there. Even though I really need support, like a pillow in bed. You see where I'm going. And then one God, I would pray, and only true God, only true. I'm thinking it, of course, not saying it, because that would mess it up. But then other things like bless me, make me a blessing, and so forth. And then at the end, it would be calm me, make me so calm. Ah, yes. And my muscles then are very relaxed. See, turning it into a prayer made it focusing on God, and so therefore, when I go to sleep, when I get into bed, and I use pillows to relax my body, to support my body, and then I'll think those prayers, and vary them with what's going on, but especially in terms of relaxing my body. But the main thing is praying to God, thinking these things to God, because He can read our minds. In fact, He's the master divine mind reader. He is, and He reads my mind as I am relaxing my body and praying to Him with those prayers. I give that to you if you want to use it. I thought I'd invented those prayers, but I learned later that some priest long before me had done them way back in the Middle Ages. So and others have done it since then. So that really deflated me. You know, I didn't invent this at all. But of course not. But that's what I think. But before that, while I'm getting undressed, I'll pray prayers of surrender. I want to surrender my whole life to God, and all the various things that I struggle with. Um, I pray, Lord, I surrender to you, Father, Jesus, and Holy Spirit. I, I surrender this to that and the other thing, my whole life, and uh, all of my concern, and I give them all to you, God, and that's what I pray as I'm brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed, and I pray for good health and some other things, and and but the surrender prayers I find to be very, very wonderful, because then God is the high and lifted up creator and spirit and redeemer of his people, but also the creator of everyone. And I lift him up in those prayers, and I humble myself to surrender before him. And so that's the answer of what I pray about. So any other questions? We're getting towards the hour and a half, but we have a few minutes to go, about 14 according to my clock here, or even 16 according to the live. We've been live for according to that, an hour and 14 minutes. So time for more, but I would like, in the meantime, until these questions come, to go to my website, growing to know God .com or org, either one. Both of them will get you there. So there you'll see my blog, and you can read about who God is. You can read about what it means to know God, and also what it means to grow in knowing God, which is embedded in the title of the URL of the website, growingtoknowgod.org or com. And you'll find the blog there. I have several blog posts, and I'm going to be doing more, but I hope you're blessed by my blogs. And on the other hand, I have all the information about all the books, including the one that came out today, 2104. All right, we got another question. Okay, use the old glasses. don't need them very often, but do you find that faith and scriptural values play a role in your work uh, or in your book? Well, scriptural values play a role in your work or in your book. Yes. You'll find the scriptural values scattered throughout all my books, including the Divided Together series, or the Farhan trilogy, I call it, where Farhan shares what his faith is, what his Christian faith is, and wonder of wonders, it tends to agree with mine. You know, who thought? You know. But he shares Christian beliefs, his Christian beliefs, with other people. The Muslim woman in the first one, the atheist in the second one, and the Hindu in the third one. And in the third one, 2104, he also talks with an atheist couple, which you will probably find very interesting. But that's how my Christian values, my spiritual values, they're throughout the books. Of course, in the Bible studies, you know, devotional Bible studies, but also in my, of course, throughout my autobiography, the God biography, what God has done. That is the story of my life, but actually what God has done in my life. And so Christian values or spiritual values come out strong there too. All the things that God has done for me throughout my 79 years. And then in my, of course, in my Bible studies, in my straight nonfiction, like the What God Has Done book, and you'll find more information about that on my website, and along with all the other books. And spiritual values, God has blessed me abundantly through all the struggles and the traumas in my life to teach me spiritual values, and also in all the moves that we made. I mean, we made moves when I was a teacher, English teacher, and so especially when I was a preacher, pastor, I was here and there all over the United States, and even one church in Canada, Saskatoon. And in all those situations, God has enabled me something like a prophet, you know, that can kind of stand back from the culture that people are in those churches, and the parts of the culture that are not biblical, which people kind of fall into because they, I don't know, they're not aware of the biblical value or whatever. What God has enabled me to do is objectively look at that, and of course, a preacher really needs to be objective about the culture around the Christians that he preaches to, so that he can share God's values, spiritual values, with his people. And that happened in 7 churches for me. So that's what I kind of sprinkle throughout all of my books, basically, in order to help you folks and other Christians who read my books, to help them grow to be more like Jesus. And that's the whole purpose of my writing. I hope to honor God and to enable Christians to be more like Jesus. And so I hope that my books help you do that, and use what God has given me in these times when I'm live live from my man cave. So anyway, you can see that I'm a very extremely serious person. But I'm serious too. As both. My dad. I've said this before. I think in these live sessions, my dad was very much enjoyed humor and comedies back in the 50s. Those are all clean comedies on TV, and we would laugh together, and I learned to laugh with Dad, though he was an unbeliever until he was 77 years old. Uh, and then he became a believer in Christ 2 years before he died. But then my mom was very serious. Once in a while she would smile, but she wouldn't laugh. I don't ever remember her laughing, but she was very serious about the Christian faith. She was a believer, but I learned to be serious also from her, and so I have balanced in all my books, no matter what kind of book it is. In all my books, you have humor that balances the serious things, like all the suspense about all the violent and non-violent crimes in my three novels, the Farhand trilogy, 2104 coming out today. There's humor and lightheartedness in the last two with Farhand's family, who gather around for supper in the evening, and that's kind of the center of the book, and the other center is in the investigative group that Farhand's a part of, along with his partner Saidas, and that's very serious. But there's humor in that group too, because humor actually relieves stress, and that's why I have tried to balance seriousness and humor in all my books, because that's me and my parents, the balance that I've learned from them. So that's where that comes from. So that's my answer. Okay, let's see. Okay, how do you develop your plot? Oh, yes. In the three mystery novels, I kind of knew with each one of them, I kind of knew the kind of person that would be the criminals, sometimes more plural, more than one criminal. But I kind of knew those, and I kind of knew what the maybe the clues that would finally make the case, solid. But and I kind of knew in the first novel, I knew that I wanted a Christian hero criminologist and a partner who wasn't a Christian. But that's all I knew when I started writing. So developing the plot was God using my imagination to bring in this minor character and that minor character and in the first book with the Muslim names, give you a secret. Okay, don't tell anybody. The Muslim names all mean something in English, and if you look all those up, it kind of matches the character of the person. Kind of, not completely, but um, uh, that's a secret, keep it. Let's keep that to ourselves. but I didn't know all these characters were going to be in my novel, and but God, prompted me, my imagination or something, to bring about the fullness of the novel and all that went on between the beginning and the final end. That's how I developed the plot right out of my imagination. But God provided an interest in me in justice, that is, justice for crimes, way back when I was younger, when I'd watch Perry Mason, which was he was a lawyer, and I would watch Andy Griffith as also a defense lawyer, a very successful one, and pulling things out of the hat, and and then I would watch Law and Order and all the other ones on TV, and God used that to enable me to come up with the courtroom scenes in the books, and to come up with the criminal investigations that are in a lot of those were in a lot of those legal shows. So that's also what caused me to plot, provide the plot in all three of those novels. Though the plots went very differently from what those legal shows showed. Okay, maybe one more question, which if you could collaborate with one writer. Oops. Oh, it disappeared. If you could collaborate with one writer, if I could have it back, I could see the rest of it. That would be helpful. If you could collaborate. I've collaborated with one writer, and we wrote a book about faith, and a Bible study about faith, and that's been published. I really didn't mention that. I guess that's 10 of them, but I collaborated because we were on Facebook together, and he checked me out, and found out what a rascal I was. No, not. God has enabled me to control my outward life. It's the inward life that I have trouble with. But anyway, he checked me out, and then he approached me on Facebook, and we wrote a book together. So I don't know if that's what you asked about, but if I could see that last question, I could maybe answer what else you asked. So I guess it may not be coming. We're almost to the hour and a half that we had allotted. So if I could see the rest of that question, I could answer it. But maybe there's another question you could sneak in. Maybe you could sneak in a question. Any other questions or comments or whatever? Wednesdays are hump days that people call them. And it's really hump day for me because I'm going to be on live at 3 o'clock every day, Monday through Saturday this week. And then, of course, next Monday, but not Sunday, because I set that aside for the Lord. I believe it's the Lord's Day and celebrating Jesus' resurrection. And so I'm not on Sunday. My work is stops, comes to a screeching halt on Saturday, late Saturday, and I don't write or even mostly touch the computer unless there's an emergency on Sunday. So it's for resting and worship, according to the Bible. So any other questions that you have before we wrap up? I wish I knew the rest of that question, though, about collaboration, because there was another person who wanted to collaborate with me, too. We were both on Facebook, and that really hasn't materialized. Well, two others, one in Denmark and one in where was he? I forget. Oklahoma. We were going to collaborate on books, but they haven't come along. We've both been pretty busy on other projects. So anyway, 3 people have approached me to collaborate, and I would enjoy that. You know, we could send the manuscript back and forth between us and come up with a pretty good book. But I enjoyed writing it myself too. So okay, one more question here. If you could collaborate, oh, there it is. If you could collaborate with one writer, dead or alive, who would it be? Well, one other time, a similar, well, not a similar question, but they asked, what is my writing style like? And I answered Ernest Hemingway, because his style is straightforward, a positive, active style, and mine is too. And so the way I write is kind of like Ernest Hemingway, although I didn't find a lot of humor in his books, especially The Old Man and the Sea, which I taught. But it's that kind of style that I like to do. Very active instead of passive voice, and showing people rather than telling people, showing people what the action and the dialogue is, but rather than telling people about it. For example, if we if I as a writer said, well, that murderer did a lot of murderers in his basement, that's telling. Whereas showing, although I withhold the most gruesome details in the murders, for obvious reasons, I don't want to create a horror book, so I withhold those. But it is pretty definite showing